From the front lines of the military to the front lines of business, this is Military to Management. I'm your host, Eamon. Each episode, we uncover how veterans are translating discipline, leadership, and mission-first values into success in today's corporate world. Hey, Tim, really excited to have you on the Military to Management podcast today. Your PMP training program is something that I personally benefited from, so really excited to have you on, hear about you, your background, your company, and get all the advice you can possibly give to some folks who might be transitioning out of the military or who recently did. So if you could kind of start off, Tim, what did you do in the military and what was it like when you decided to get out?
Thanks, Eamon. So I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity. Man, I think it's just wonderful when we as veterans can get together and kind of socialize our collective experience, right, and share lessons learned and help others. So awesome work you're doing. I really appreciate it. Well, I'm a retired U.S. Marine, right, and I retired a long time ago now in 2009. So it's been 16 years since I retired, but in the Marine Corps, I came in as a aircraft electrician. I worked on A6E intruders, EA6B prowlers. Ended up getting promoted up through the ranks to master sergeant. And at that point, they moved me into being an avionics chief, and I worked in a Harrier squadron as avionics chief there. Got called, did a bunch of deployments in between then, a bunch of UDPs, did NATO operation over in Aviano, Italy with the Prowler Squadron, went deployed to OIF. I was aboard the USS Baton with VMA 542 and deployed over there during the initial invasion for that. And then after I got back from that deployment off the Baton, I got called up to headquarters Marine Corps to be a enlisted assignments monitor at MMEA 84, and I was responsible for the assignment of all the organizational level Marines in avionics and flight equipment. I made sure all the squadrons in Marine Corps were staffed with the Marines they needed, and I did that for 3 years. And while I was there, I volunteered as a casualty escort because we were in the middle of combat there with Iraq, and the Marines were taking casualties, and I ended up doing 3 of those. So I did escorts 3 different times while I was a master sergeant, and then I think as a master gunny, I got promoted at headquarters Marine Corps to master gunny. Went back to MALS 14 after my tour at headquarters Marine Corps, and was the avionics chief at MALS 14, which is the largest avionics division in the Marine Corps. So that was pretty cool. And at that point, a couple years later in 2009, I decided it was time to depart the Marine Corps. I love the Marine Corps, love being a Marine, but I think that my experience in the Marines of having get promoted to master gunnery sergeant, and then there's only, I think at the time there were 14 master gunnery sergeants in my MOS in the Marine Corps. So there's not a lot of billets to go to, right? So the higher in rank you get, the smaller your opportunities are to move around and do things. And I was never going to be master gunny of the Marine Corps. That progression wasn't there for master gunny. So I was at 24 years kind of stuck with lateral moves to other similar billets, and there was really no growth opportunity. I don't think at the time I thought that when I decided to retire, but looking back at it, I'm pretty sure that's, Maslow's hierarchy of needs was, I just wasn't able to hit that top level anymore of self-actualization and, seeing growth. And that's probably why I got out, because I'm always looking for what's next, what can I do, what can I accomplish, just kind of driven to see challenges. And it wasn't there anymore for me. But I got out of the Marine Corps at that point, 2009, not really knowing what the heck I was going to do. But in the Marine Corps, I had leveraged tuition assistance and came in right out of high school. But on active duty over the years, I had gotten an associate's degree in electronics, a bachelor's degree in electronic systems technology, and then ultimately an MBA degree. And so when I retired, I had all this cool Marine Corps experience, headquarters Marine Corps stuff, and an MBA. And I basically had a big head and thought, hey, I'm going to get out of the Marine Corps and I'm going to get snatched up by some employer who's going to pay me 6 figures and life's going to be good. And that didn't happen. So reality set in, after I retired.
Great explanation of a 24-year career. Appreciate everything that you did, and sounds like you had a ton of great experiences. For most folks, they don't make it to master guns, but the the transition out is pretty similar. You go from something that you've known for X amount of years, in your case, 24 years, to something that you don't necessarily know. And you hit on a couple points. You know, you expected to get a nice job because you had your MBA and a ton of experience in the Marine Corps. That didn't necessarily happen. Tim, can you kind of walk us through what did happen? What were some challenges you faced when you got out? And then what were some things that you did that were really productive that helped kind of propel you in the right direction?
Yeah, so I didn't really have any direction of where I wanted to go when I got out. I was kind of just hoping something would happen, right? That I thought that I would get offers and then I'd be able to select, okay, which direction I wanted to go. It didn't happen. And so I found myself, just having to come up with direction and figure out what's next because, I thought it would kind of be handed to me. And so I was not well prepared to get out, which I think is the experience of a majority of people as they get out. So doing things like this hopefully will help prepare them because I'd love for people to avoid the feeling that I had. I've been an entrepreneur since before I even came in the Marine Corps. I had a grass cutting business and lived out in the country and had some chickens and sold chicken eggs and, did all these kind of things. So I always knew I was going to do some sort of entrepreneurial thing. And when I got out, the very first thing that I did, I was actually a sales director at a radio station in North Carolina. And I was going around, I had a couple salespeople work for me and I was going around trying to find, advertisers. And through doing that, I had a guy that had a little store that I wanted him, try to get him to advertise it. And he said, well, I'm actually thinking about selling. And I was like, oh, okay, I want to be an entrepreneur. Maybe I'll buy his store and make it go. So I ended up doing that. I bought his store and thought this is going to be my thing. I'm going to run this as an entrepreneur and grow it. And that didn't work either. So I got into the store and, not knowing retail and anything around that, I had an MBA degree again, thinking that I could do anything, which one of the parts of being an entrepreneur is you fail a lot. But you learn from those and you go on and you fix what was broken in the last effort and do better. So it wasn't, necessarily a bad thing, but, I jumped in there and the business didn't go too well. I ended up selling it. And I got a job at Craven Community College in North Carolina as the director of workforce development and military programs. So my MBA degree did get my foot in the door there. College, always wants people with education. So I took that job. Big haughty sounding title. And with the income from my job there at Craven Community College, plus my Marine Corps retirement, my take home pay still was not what my active duty pay and benefits were. So I had taken a, little quality of life dive there. This is across about 2 years that I'm talking about. I was still looking for what's next. And I got an email from an old Marine friend of mine that said there's a company named CGI Federal up around Quantico that's looking for a staff NCO who knows TIFRS, which is the Total Force Retention System in Marine Corps. But anyway, I knew that from my time at Headquarters Marine Corps. So I put my resume in, got an interview with CGI, and they hired me because they were actually modernizing or upgrading the TIFRS system for the Marine Corps, and they needed a subject matter expert. So like, okay, here's my foot in the door things that I had been looking for from the time I retired, but this is in 2011. So I retired until 2009, kind of struggled around for 2 years. 2011, I got hired by CGI as an SME, boosted my income a little bit. But I got up there at CGI and I really enjoyed it. I loved what I was doing there. And was enjoying life. And I went in for an evaluation with my boss, just periodic, evaluation. And he was a retired Marine too, by the way. I think he was a retired Marine Master Sergeant, but he was like a program manager at that point. And he says, "Hey Tim, if you want to stick around here at CGI and get into project manager career track, I need you to go get the PMP certification." And so that was in late 2011, first I'd ever heard of it. And I said, "What's that?" So I was retired from the Marine Corps for 2 years before I even ever heard of that. And of course, this is a long time ago. The PMP wasn't as well known and popular, but he said, you need to go get that PMP. I ended up doing that. I got another retired Marine warrant officer who worked there that kind of mentored me through it and helped me do my application. I took a little training class that the company offered, which was not very robust at all, but I did that and did a bunch of self-study. Back then, there weren't near as many PMP training resources, which is one reason I started, PMProLearn was to help people there. Ended up, doing that hard work. I took the test and passed. And first try, I did really good actually. And so I realized, oh, this is right up my alley. It kind of clicked with me. I understood it, right? It made sense to me. And I realized that project management is the same thing as mission accomplishment that I had, spent the last 24 years kind of immersed in the Marine Corps. So since then, I've mentored other veterans that, hey, mission accomplishment equals project management. And let me show you why. Because every mission or project is a temporary endeavor pursued to achieve a unique product, service, or result. And that's what you do in missions. And every one of them integrates or balances time, cost, scope, quality, risks, and resources, and has to make all that work together to achieve whatever your goal is. So, and you're leading a team, right? Leading a team, managing things to completion. And I said, hey, this is what I did as a Marine, and this fits. And that's one reason I probably did well in the training and on the test, because it fit my military skill set, right? Experience. And I think it applies to any job skill, whether, you're an officer enlisted, or whether you were, motor T or avionics or infantry, logistics, all of that. We use the same basic skill sets to accomplish our missions and our goals, and leading teams of Marines or soldiers or airmen or sailors, whichever branch you're in, you're doing that. So I got the PMP, and I went back to my boss and said, hey, here it is. Got my PMP. And true to his word, about a month later, he put me in charge of my own project. And this was software development. So I was put in charge of my very first project was a software development project. I had a dedicated team of developers and database administrators, system administrators, some security experts, and this sort of thing. And this was a project we were doing for the Marine Corps, actually. It wasn't Total Force Retention System. It was something else called OBMT, which is an obscure little thing, but it was my first project, so I was proud of it. And I had a little small team there, but I like to tell people, go back and listen to what I did in the Marine Corps, right? I fixed airplanes, worked at headquarters of the Marine Corps. Oh, I was a recruiter too. I did 3 years on recruiting duty, and that was my experience. But then all of a sudden, after I get this PMP thing, I am managing a software development project. What did I know about software development? And the answer is zero. But the PMP is what put me in that. It wasn't my MBA degree, and it wasn't necessarily anything particular that I did in the military. It was, however, my military overall experience of leadership and project management and achieving goals, together with that civilian certification. It kind of codified my value to the employer. They hired me. And so there I was as a project manager at CGI Federal.
Yeah, I think that's a great illustration of the power of the PMP, which I can second that. One of my mentors when I first got out said there's two disciplines that every serious company needs that are industry agnostic, and that's financial acumen and project management. So every serious company needs project management, and you don't necessarily have to be an industry insider to be able to manage a project, which, you clearly showed by managing a software project as your first major project. How did it go from that project manager position to where you are now as an entrepreneur, teaching other, veterans and people getting out of the military how to leverage project management as a skill? Talk to us about that.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, so the CGI worked that project for a while, maybe, I don't know, 6 months or 8 months. It wasn't super long, and the company started laying people off. I didn't get laid off, but I saw the writing on the wall that it was a government contract type thing, and sometimes they're hiring, sometimes they're letting people go based on their winning contracts or losing them. So I saw the writing on the wall that I was probably not going to have a long-term history there. So I started just putting resumes out. And my boss actually told me to. I went in one day and said, hey, should I be worried? He's like, I'd start, looking for options if I were you. So he was transparent with me. And I started putting resumes out. And one of the jobs I applied for was at the Food and Drug Administration in the Center for Veterinary Medicine's Office of New Animal Drug Evaluation. So all those terms there, pretty specific line of work. And I saw the job out there online, and I looked at them like, man, I don't know anything about pharmaceuticals or veterinary medicine, but I met all their qualifications. I met every single one of them, right? And the PMP, by the way, was not a requirement of that job, although I had it. But it was a project manager role. But I put in the application got a call, got an interview, got hired. And I couldn't believe that I got hired. Literally, when I went in for the interview, I thought I must be a token interview that they have to do. They got to check a box that they interviewed a service disabled veteran, which I was, and to meet some quota, and I'm never going to get the job. And a matter of fact, when I was in the job interview, they ask you all these questions, in an interview. And at the end, they asked me, Tim, do you have any questions for us? And I said, yes. Am I actually really competitive for this job? Because I don't feel like I am. I don't have pharmaceutical or veterinary medicine experience. And they said, no, you're very competitive. And what we need is a project manager. We need somebody that can lead teams. We need somebody that can problem solve. We need somebody that can do all this project management stuff. And you look like you can do that. You have a great resume that sounds like a project manager. That's one thing I worked hard was to build my resume to brand myself as a project management expert. And they said, you have the PMP. Now, remember, the PMP was not a requirement on the job. But when I was in the interview, they brought it up. They said, and you have the PMP. Like, oh, okay, so that's a competitive edge. And a couple of weeks later, I get the phone call and they said, when can you start? And next thing I know, I showed up for work at the FDA's Office of New Animal Drug Evaluation. I think I started as a GS11 and got promoted to GS12 after, over time. I was there for 3 years and I managed 60 different simultaneous drug approval projects across 10 different pharmaceutical companies. So that was pretty huge that I went from managing one software project to now juggling 60 different timelines in Microsoft project and working with 10 different pharmaceutical companies as their main liaison there at the FDA. So the job of a project manager looks different depending on where you are. I manage one software project with a dedicated team, and then I'm managing 60 different projects with 10 client organizations and multitudes of different teams within the FDA that were working on those projects. So it was vastly different experience, but my title was project manager both places. And so while I was there, one of my colleagues asked me, hey, Tim, can you teach a PMP class? And I had never done it, but I had taught some college classes. I skipped over that. But one of the things I did was I was an adjunct faculty at a couple of universities right when I retired, teaching business management. So that leveraged my master's degree for that. But I had been teaching at the college level, and I knew PMP. I'm like, hey, I can teach it. So I told my colleague, yeah, I can teach it. And he's like, great, because I got a friend at the University of Maryland University College who is in charge of a department there. They want to put on a PMP class and asked me, did I know anybody? And so that's how I got into teaching project management. So I had some experience. I had some teaching experience, some project management experience. And then UMUC needed a PMP class. And so this was up around, Washington, D.C., Maryland area. And so I drove over there and put on a PMP class with 4 students. And the college bought some curriculum online somewhere, and I studied it, went in and taught these 4 students. And 2 of them ended up taking the test. Everybody that takes PMP classes do not test. There's just people that don't follow through. But 2 of them ended up taking the test and let me know that they passed. I'm like, wow, I can do this. I can teach people the PMP. So it worked. So over time, I just started, picking up other little opportunities to teach for other organizations, basically as a 1099 contractor. And was teaching a class here and there. Somebody would find me on LinkedIn and say, can you go teach a class? I'd take a week of leave from my job, fly somewhere, teach a class, because they paid fairly good for a week of work. And it was worth it to do it. So I was working as a project manager and picking up side jobs, teaching project management and mentoring a lot of people through LinkedIn and people that just, got connected to me and said, hey, how did you get into this project management stuff? Because you're just a retired Marine, avionics guy. How did you do this? So I started mentoring people how it happened. And I said, hey, PMP is the key that unlocked that career path for me. It really opened up opportunities to probably do the same thing for you. So I was mentoring people, helping them do their applications, helping them study and whatnot. And it evolved into the opportunity to start a business doing that. So several years I tried to get the business going. I ended up leaving the FDA because government job just was not my thing. I realized after 3 years I was more of an entrepreneur, and I wanted to build something of my own rather than just coming to work and buzzing through what someone else had to do for me and collecting a paycheck. I wanted to go out there and make something happen. I guess that entrepreneurial drive. So So I ended up, leaving the FDA and working at a couple of other private companies as a project manager. I worked at CGI Federal Services for a little while as a project manager, and that's where I learned Agile. And I got immersed in the world of Scrum and Scrum Masters and backlogs and all the stuff that goes into the Agile world, and really love that too. I thought this was really innovative, and I try to apply it, anywhere I can now. But I got recruited away from Accenture Federal Services by another company, a small company called Regent Education, who offered me a good pay raise close to my house that I could work from home. And they stocked beer in the refrigerator in the break room at work. I mean, so
It's a pretty good deal. Yeah.
yeah. So they had snacks and beer and soda. So anyway, I took that job and worked there for about a year. All this time, I was building out curriculum and content for my training company and selected a learning management system to use, built a website, and I'm doing all this on nights and weekends while I'm still managing projects and mentoring people on the side.
Can I ask you a little bit about that, Tim? A lot of your story hits home, with me and then probably a lot of different veterans. The project management certification and working as a project manager right when you get out is a very smooth transition. Getting an MBA and then, kind of climbing the ranks. Also, a pretty typical way for people to climb the corporate ladder. But working on the side and like developing your business while you're working for somebody else, that's something that I did and it allowed me to launch my business. But you obviously, you were doing it for several years. So I want to ask you, what was that balance like? Were you working like 100-hour weeks trying to do both, or did you have like a clear strategy? Is there any like tips and tricks you have for somebody that might want to, do something similar once they get out of the military?
Well, I just took my time doing it. Work-life balance. I had a family, full-time job, and then I'm trying to, do this on the side. And every once in a while, you want to have a day off and enjoy, your things that you like in life. So I took my time at it. I didn't drive too hard. I had done several entrepreneurial things, and had not done well at them. I mentioned a couple to you. Learning those lessons, one of the things I realized was that if I'm going to start a business, I don't want to be in debt when I do it. I don't want to borrow money. I don't want to take on investors, partners, anything. I just want to kick a business off, not owing anybody a thing, and try to kick it that way. I think one of the mistakes that people make trying to start a business. And I made this mistake, right? When I bought that store, I got myself in debt trying to make this retail store go and poured more money into it and lost it. That's not a bad thing to invest money in a business, but when you don't have money to invest, that's a bad thing, right? So if you take out, debt to invest in a business, you're really gambling. And when you got a family to feed and you don't know what next year looks like, I just wanted to be I was an entrepreneur, I was a risk taker, but also smart enough to look at the risks and balance them out and say, I just need to build this thing and take my time at doing it and make sure I've got a solid idea and not have debt when I start it, not have a payment that I have to make. Right. So when I started, I actually turned on the PMProLearn website January 1st of 2017. That didn't owe anybody money. I turned it on and started trying to get people to enroll. And the only thing it cost me was my time and a little bit of money for website and stuff. It's pretty minuscule, a couple dollars a month here and there. But that's how I kind of started it. And when I realized that to grow it, I needed help, I started reaching out to people I knew. And so I'm kind of like that. That's how I've kind of built our team on PMProLearn. Every time we've wanted to hire someone to be an instructor or client support or anything, always think about who do I know, or ask my team, who do you know that might be a good fit for this? And that's one thing to keep in mind as you're looking for jobs is there's a lot of that going on in companies, even big companies, where we may post a job out there, but there are a lot of jobs that aren't posted and a lot of jobs that get posted that they're already, pursuing, talking to someone else that they know. So networking is a key thing, right? Because you got to be top of mind of the employer, to get that job. So, or someone that's currently in the company, right? So I started looking for people to help me grow the business. And I asked a couple of guys, I said, hey, would you like to help go find training opportunities for me? Companies, businesses, military units, individuals that want to come, pay for this training to help grow the business and, I can help them get their certification. And so I offered a commission. So instead of saying, I'll pay you X an hour or whatever, I said, I don't have anything to give you, but if you bring business, you'll get 20% of it. And so that's what I did. So I had like 5 guys who stepped up to the plate and said, yeah, I'll do that. And if you pay me 20%, out of the 5, 1 guy actually produced anything, and the others just kind of trickled off. They just it wasn't their thing. They didn't produce anything, but the one guy really started bringing business, and I was cutting him 20% checks for everything that came in, and we started growing the business. That was so I turned on the website in January of 2017, and in June, I think, of 2017 is when he came on and helped me start finding business. And my wife was a big part of this too. She and I started the business. She was helping package the books, and we were taking them to the post office and mailing them out back then, and she was helping, do the student rosters. And so she was, the client support team was my wife at the time. So we did that for like 6 months. And then this guy came on board in June, helped start building things. And in November of 2017, he had gotten several classes lined up for me in December and January. And I didn't have enough PTO, paid time off, or, leave if you're still active duty, didn't have enough leave left to go do these classes. And I told him, I said, hey, his name's Josh Atkinson. Right. And so I told Josh, I said, Josh, man, I don't have enough time to teach these classes. So what do we want to do? He's like, well, you have 2 choices. You can either keep your job that you're doing as a project manager at Region Education, or you can quit and teach these classes, and we'll try to get some more and make this thing really go. And so that was a jumping off point for me. I'd been running the business on the side for almost 11 months, and we got to the point where it was kind of go for it or you don't. So I talked to my wife and I said, what do you think we ought to do? And I'm just blessed with, a partner in my wife, Alicia, that is kind of as crazy as I am. And she's like, let's go for it. And not knowing, how we had like 3 classes lined up, but didn't know anything beyond that. So I told Josh, I said, all right, let's do it. So I turned in my notice at Region Education, said, sorry, I got to go do this PMProLearn thing, and kicked off. And I had asked Josh, I said, Josh, do you think if I quit my job, do you think we can generate $100,000 in revenue, not profit, but revenue in 2018 if I do this? And he said, I think it's possible, because I was calculating if we brought in 100 grand in revenue and I paid him 20%, and then I paid for my travel and I paid for the books, and we were including exam fees at the time too. I paid all this. I figured I'd make maybe 50, 60,000, right? Out of that, that was like half of my current pay as a project manager. But I thought I can probably survive on that just to get the business going. So that was my goal. And Josh said, I think we can do it. And a year later, at the end of 2018, we had brought on 2 other employees. We were the 1099 contractors at the time, but we brought people on to help with clients, and I had brought on another instructor. And we had brought in, I think, trying to remember the exact number, it was $940 some thousand dollars.
There you go. Nice.
And, we had started with the idea, can we bring in 100,000? And we ended up bringing in over $900,000 in that first full-time year, and hiring 2 more people and really getting the ball rolling. And the downside was I worked my butt off, and I lived out of a suitcase because I was always going somewhere on an airplane somewhere to teach a class, but it's a good problem to have, right? So what we found was that there was a market for people wanting this PMP certification and getting into the field of project management. And it was predominantly, not exclusively, but predominantly military clientele, right? And so we have done quite a bit of civilian training. We were actually, T-Mobile's trained all their project managers 1 year, I think it was 2022, 21, where we trained all of T-Mobile's PMs. And we've done a lot of other ones, Johnson Controls. And I'd have to go look at our website to remember all the folks we worked with, Mantech. Predominantly, the military was attracted to us. And I think because I'm a retired Marine. Josh was a Marine captain who, got out as a logistics officer at 2nd Marine Division. And the instructor that I hired was a retired Marine gunnery sergeant who was a tanker in the Marine Corps, and combat veteran, and awesome guy named Ian Fisher. Brought him on as an instructor. Consequently, that was 2017, 2018. Fast forward to 2025, Josh and Ian are now both business partners who have ownership of shares of PMProLearn. So the three of us own and operate PMProLearn at this point. And those two guys started just as 1099 contractors for, a guy who started a business from his kitchen table. And that's kind of where it's grown. And now we're at, I think we've got 23 or 24 full-time employees, and then half a dozen or so part-time folks that, work when we need to surge and do things. So we're teaching anywhere between 2,000 and 3,000 students a year at this point. 2025 was a little bit lower because of all the government disruption and the fact that we have a large clientele on the military side. The government shutdown, slowed all that down, and just different things that have happened over the year changed how government spends money, impacted us a good bit, but we're still going strong. Student count dropped a little bit in 2025, but it looks like signs are 2026 are going to pick up. And that's just for funding. There is no shortage of demand for what we offer our training, but how people pay for it is changes over time. So, but that's how I got into it. And, at some point I was just a sole proprietor entrepreneur. And at some point we realized, oh, we need a structure here in this company. And so I started getting called the CEO, and I'm on paper with the state of Maryland where we incorporated. When we started, it wasn't a corporation. We just started as a sole proprietorship. And in 2019, we actually incorporated as an S corporation in the state of Maryland in February of 2019. And so now we're a corporation founded there, and I'm the CEO, and we've got a board and stuff like that. So it became a little bit more of a formal framework, but that's how I became a CEO. I didn't get hired as a CEO. I basically created my own CEO position, through just being an entrepreneur.
It's a great way to do it, honestly, and, you get all the
Rewards.
reward for doing it. Tim,
Yeah.
I've got a question for you. For some folks who might be thinking about getting out and think that project management might be a good option for them, what are some key things that they should think about, like, whether if they have the traits to be successful in project management, or like what they can expect? What are some things that those folks should be thinking about if they're, considering a career in project management?
Yeah, okay, great. So the first thing I would say is realize that this is totally doable, that you can find a fantastic, lucrative career that actually fulfills a lot of your needs as you're getting out. And I'm talking about intangible needs. So yeah, we all need a good paycheck and benefits, got to take care of the family, but we also are looking for a sense of purpose. We're looking for a challenge. We're looking for team camaraderie and cohesion around a common goal, right? Those are things that we've had in the military. And while it's not the same thing when you get out in project management, there's a lot of similarities there. The field of project management can definitely fuel your fire, is what I'm saying, and give you a reason to wake up in the morning and say, man, I got to go accomplish some stuff today, and I'm going to make it happen, and I got a team that I'm working with to do it. So it's exciting, and there's never a dull moment, and every project's different. One of the things about projects, the definition of them is they produce a unique product, service, or result. So you're never going to do the exact same things as a project manager. So there's a little bit of fun and excitement in it as well, travel and adventure, like we used to say in the Marine Corps. Um, but so realize it's a totally doable thing, regardless of your MOS job skill, your rank. Now, it's true that the higher rank you are, the more kind of robust management experience you have, right? So if you're a corporal getting out, you're not going to have the same experience as a master sergeant or a major lieutenant colonel leading this stuff. It's still a doable course for you, course of action. But the majority of people that have spent more than 2 tours in the military and you've reached E6 or above, this is right in your wheelhouse. I mean, you can knock this out of the park. So realize you can do it. And then secondly, I'd say that there are tons of success stories out there, and I can point you to a lot of them. I don't want to take the time on here, but if you want to ping me later, I can send you, a lot of information about people that I've worked with who are now doing great things out there in big companies, and making lots of good, revenue, and excited about what they do because they went this route. And I'm just one of those who started my own training company, but there's a lot of people that are, working for one guy I know is a retired Marine Corps major, works as a product manager now at Lowe's and making super good income. I mean, well into the six-figure range there at Lowe's, and, loving life and been there for many years. So there's a great pathway for you and a lot of success stories. If you want to look at going this way, a couple things is like, number one, start looking at yourself in the military as a project manager, right? Start looking around you and saying, what am I doing that is a project? Now, you may not understand what that means, and so getting a little training is going to help you, right? So I would encourage everyone interested in this to go take a PMP course. Now, you can sign up for a college course in project management. There's degrees out there in project management. Not poo-pooing on those at all, but I'm going to tell you that the certifications, the training, and then the actual certification, that time frame is super compressed and super powerful compared to taking a college course in project management. Do both. But I'm an advocate that certifications are definitely trump degrees in today's hiring world. And you're going to hear that from tons of people, not just me, but that, and I'm not saying that because I sell it. I started PMProLearn and trying to help people because I believed in it, right? I was like, oh, people need this certification. Let's start helping people get that. So that's how that worked. Take a training class now, regardless of where you're at. If you're 10 years out from retiring or getting out, or 6 months from now, do it now. So you can get the training, understand what you're currently doing in the military as projects, start applying the knowledge that you're going to learn in the training to your military projects, because you're going to be able to start documenting that. You're going to build a resume now that sounds like a project manager. You're using terminology. You can say, I actually applied these skill sets that I learned in the military. And it's not, so some people think, oh, I'm getting out. I got, 4 months to get out. I better get a certification now. And while I would agree with you, get it anytime that you need it. If you wait that long, what happens is you get the certification and it's nice and shiny and brand new, and everybody knows that. When did you get your PMP? Oh, I got it last month. And a company's saying, well, we want to hire you to manage a $10 million project, and we're looking for a little more depth of experience rather than, the shiny PMP thing. So if you've got a PMP and it's a little bit dirty, it's a little bit tarnished, it's got years of wear and tear on it, that actually makes it more valuable. So when you get out of the service, because people look at it and say, oh, you've been a PMP doing this for a long time, and you're documenting projects that you did while you're in the military as a project manager, right? You're writing it correctly, and you're using the knowledge and capturing it. So now when you get out, you got a well-worn certification, and you got a resume that looks like you are going to, be super valuable when you walk into that door, rather than, well, here's somebody that's yeah, they got project manager experience, because you literally have to document experience to qualify for the PMP. However, it's still shiny and new. Yeah,
That's
get
great
the
advice.
certification early. Yeah, absolutely. And I would also say it's not just PMP. I would say that PMP is the rock star certification that, regardless of what industry you go into or what job, it doesn't even need to be a project manager title. There's so many jobs out there that are like, I think you mentioned before that, this skill set of project management, even if it's not your primary role, even if you're not going to be managing projects, if you understand projects and their relevance to the organization you're working in and how they fit in the overall strategy of your company, you are super valuable to that company. So the PMP paints that picture. It's the rock star certification. But there are other certifications out there that are super valuable, like the PMI Agile Certified Practitioner, if you're getting into the Agile world. And I'll tell you, that's growing and growing and growing. So many companies are starting to seek people with Agile certifications and experience, or Lean Six Sigma Green Belt or Black Belt. Those are highly sought after in the process improvement and the quality world. Change management professional. Change is part of growth, right? And companies go through change, and change is a strategic weapon for companies, right? Disruption generates innovation. So companies are looking for ways to be disruptive in the market. What's the next new product or service that we can put out there that will overcome what our competitors are doing? So companies are trying to be disruptors. It creates innovation, and all that relates to change. Now, disruption and innovation are great as a business weapon, but they do cause people to go through change, and human beings don't necessarily do well with change. We like, things the same way. I realized when I was teaching a class last week at 29 Palms, California. I was at the hotel in the workplace. And like the third day I was there, I just laughed to myself and said, I'm parking in the exact same parking spot at this training location every single day, you know, and it's just human behavior, not even thinking about it. I'm always pulling at the same spot. So humans don't like change, but it's healthy to go through it. And change management professional is another certification that will brand you well for organizations, you know, to help them go through this because they're looking for how to do that better. So certifications in general are very, very powerful, but I would say the PMP is the one that's most sought after by organizations out there because it's got the widest applicability
I
to everything.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing all those certifications. I was going to ask you about that. So you listed off a bunch of them. We'll make sure to have those in the notes. One other thing I would just echo, having the project management background is extremely helpful if you want to rise to like director, VP, or C-suite level, because those people are functionally managing huge projects as they lead their departments or business units or whatever the case may
Exactly. Yeah.
be. Tim, this has been awesome. You've shared so much great knowledge. I'm sure there's going to be people who listen to this who want to find out more about PMP ProLearn, about you as well. What's the best way for them to find you and your company?
Well, thanks. So our company is out on the internet at pm-prolearn.com. pm-prolearn.com. Interesting, we had to put the dash in there because PMP, those three letters next to each other, are trademarked by the Project Management Institute. And since we do so much business with them and in their world, we didn't want to get in trouble for that. So it's
Hmm.
pm-prolearn.com. You can find us on our LinkedIn page, the company page for PM-ProLearn. You can connect with me personally on LinkedIn. I think there's only a few people with my funny last name in LinkedIn, so it wouldn't be hard to find me. Shoot me a message, shoot me a connection request. Love to connect with you and help you in any way that I can. Network you with other folks, answer questions about transition, connect you with resources. Love to just do that. So hit me up on LinkedIn. You can also email me just at Dalhouse at pm-prolearn.com, Dalhouse at pm-prolearn.com. Love to connect with people. One of the primary, when we built our company, when you started it out, you don't really have a culture built. But as you grow the company, you start to realize, oh, we're getting a team together, and who do we want to be as a team? And so we started looking at that, the people that were on the team. And this is back in actually 2020 that we started putting company culture down in writing. And we started thinking about number one, who are we and who do we aspire to be? And one of the values that we came out of that was people, that we value people and relationships over everything else. And we realized that if you build relationships with people, everything else kind of works, right? That people want to do business with people that they trust, that partnership opportunities become available, you can help more people. And so we just prioritize people. So I just want to throw out there that when I tell people, hey, please connect with me, give me the opportunity to contribute value into your life, I mean it. So I want people to connect with us because we base our business on relationships and not so much on advertising and marketing. Yeah, we do that, but our big thing is we talk about relationship marketing at PM ProLearn, and like who do you know? How can we build a network? Who can we help? Who needs us? And how can we contribute values? So definitely connect with me. I'd love to do that and help people.
Highly recommend connecting with Tim and checking out PM ProLearn. I used PM ProLearn when I got out of the Marines. They deliver the content in a way that's very understandable for somebody getting out of the military. I was able to get my PMP and it skyrocketed my career. So couldn't recommend connecting with Tim and looking into it more. If anybody's interested in that, absolutely do it. Tim, it's been a pleasure having a conversation with you today.
Very much so. Thank
Congratulations
you.
on, an amazing career, and I wish you nothing but, success, continued success, and thanks for everything
You
you
as
do
well,
for
Eamon.
the military
Yeah.
community.
Wish you that as well, and let me know if I can help you at all as well. I want to, mutually benefit, everybody that I can. And I feel like at this point, 16 years out, I've kind of found my way, and want to help other people do that because I remember what it's like, of not
Appreciate
knowing.
that.
But there's awesome things out there for you, awesome things out there for you. And America needs us. Let me tell you that. The United States needs military veterans to get out and do great things in our country. So continue serving and contributing.
Couldn't agree more. Thanks, Tim.
Okay, Eamon. Thank you, brother.
Thank you to our guest for sharing their journey from the military to corporate leadership. We'll be back soon with more stories of veterans proving that success doesn't end with a uniform. It begins a new mission. This is Military to Management with your host, Eamon.